Thank you. We'll move to question time. Order. We've moved on. Order. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. On the 30th of July, the CFMEU Administrator, Michael Crosbie, was asked on ABC's 7:30 why John Setka's membership was suspended for only 5 years. He answered, and I'm quoting, "Because the rules limit me to a maximum period of 5 years. That's as much as I can do." Asked whether the rules needed to be changed, he answered, "Maybe." Does the government accept the Administrator's statement that 5 years is the maximum sanction available to him, no matter how serious the conduct?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, I can certainly indicate in terms of expulsion that Mr Setka has been expelled from the Australian Labor Party, and that occurred some years ago, and there is no 5-year rule on that. In relation to what you have indicated, certainly what I would say is there is no we cannot tolerate corruption, criminality or violence in any part of the construction industry. I've said before in this chamber that the government has taken concrete action to clean up the industry. I have also made the point that the Albanese government has taken concrete action to do this, and in fact the Administrator has achieved more progress towards cleaning up the union than we saw in a decade, and there are multiple investigations ongoing into the construction sector following multiple referrals from police and regulators. In relation to any additional requirement of membership, obviously the government will always consider carefully the advice of the Administrator on these issues. We are committed to ensuring that corruption, criminality and violence are not part of the construction industry. And I would also say, as strong trade unionists, we also believe that we have no tolerance for criminality or corruption in any trade union.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Has the government received any advice, any correspondence or requests from the Administrator concerning the adequacy of the disciplinary powers to him under the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act of 2009? And if so, has the government considered extending those powers? Or would the Prime Minister be happy with the return of Mr Setka to the union?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
As always, Senator Hume, you seek to go a little too far. The Prime Minister, as leader of the Labor Party, ensured that Mr Setka was expelled from the Labor Party. Just let me finish. Again, expelled Mr Setka from the Labor Party. I think he's demonstrated his strength of view on this issue, and he has acted. In relation to has there been advice provided, I am not briefed on whether there's been any further advice that might relevantly go to your question. I certainly can make some inquiries, Senator, and if there's anything further I can assist you with, I will. But I again make the point, we have been very clear about our view about the very serious allegations of conduct in the construction industry. We've been very clear that any incidents of such behaviour are unacceptable, and we have acted.
Has expired. Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Minister, given that the Administrator's public statements on 7:30 that the rules may need to be changed, will the government amend the Act and the administration determination to remove the 5-year limit on expulsions and disqualifications?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
With respect, Senator Hume, I think that's actually the same question. If advice comes to government about changes that are necessary, I know that you might like to act only on what is on television, Senator, but I've said to you that if advice comes to government about any changes that are necessary, I'm sure the government will consider that very carefully, consistent with our view. One, that we don't tolerate criminality, violence or corruption in the construction sector, and second, that we have taken stronger action to combat this than any previous government, despite the protestations of those opposite. It is in fact this government, and in fact at the time I think it was Minister Watt who took stronger action than any previous government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmanin.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance and Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Before the introduction of compulsory superannuation under Labor in the 1990s, most Australian working women didn't have access to super. Today, superannuation is one of the largest pools of retirement savings in the world. It underpins the retirement of millions of Australian workers, but on average, women still retire with less super than men. Why is compulsory superannuation so important, and what has superannuation delivered for Australians since it was introduced in the 90s? And how has the Albanese Labor government continued to build on this important legacy while also delivering better super outcomes for Australian women?
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Darmanin for the question and for her career spent supporting working people in this country and strengthening compulsory superannuation, in particular for women. The compulsory superannuation system is something this country should be very proud of. 18 million Australians have a superannuation account. Super makes up around a quarter of Australians' household wealth, and Australia's superannuation pool is the fourth largest in the world at about $4.5 trillion. Now, the Albanese government has made a number of reforms to strengthen super since coming to government. We legislated the objective of super, which is to preserve savings and deliver income for a dignified retirement. We increased the superannuation guarantee to 12% after those opposite had delayed it. We introduced payday super so that workers receive their super when they are paid. For the average 25-year-old, that is worth around $6,000 more at retirement in today's dollars. Now, when it comes to women, we know that on average, women as they approach retirement age have 26% less super than men of the same age. Now, this is for a variety of reasons, including work interruptions for caring, but also because women on average have earned less than men. So what are we doing about it? We're paying super on paid parental leave so that women get superannuation when they might be out of the paid workforce and paying that caring role. We're closing the gender pay gap, and we're also supported significant increases in wages for industries dominated by women so that they're getting the wages they deserve, and that flows on to their superannuation balances over time.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmanin, first supplementary.
Thank you for that, Minister. Labor built the superannuation system to give Australians an income for a dignified retirement. What would Australian women stand to lose if it were wound back, and who would be hurt most?
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Minister.
Thank you. Well, women would be hurt most. They have lower balances, more interrupted contributions and longer retirements. And we've also seen this movie before. During COVID, when there was early access to superannuation, there were a lot of concerns raised about the withdrawals, particularly around coercive control of women removing super to higher numbers in terms of their overall balances. Because they had lower balances, they withdrew a higher proportion from those balances. Now, as we seek to strengthen and address super for women through closing the gender pay gap, through wages and through paying super on PPL, we have all of those opposite on that side of the chamber campaigning against compulsory super. We had Bragg's big day out, followed closely this week by Senator Bragg stays inside. After his little outing again on Sunday, that taught everybody a lesson. But we will defend compulsory super on this side of the debate.
Senator Darmanin, second supplementary.
Thank you.
Order. Order. Senator Bragg. Order. Senator Chisholm. When I call order, I expect the interjections to cease. Senator Darmanin.
This government has reformed the low-income super tax offset and, as of last July, has paid superannuation on Commonwealth-paid parental leave.
Why did the Albanese Labor government make those changes, and what will it deliver for women's retirement incomes?
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Darmanin for that supplementary. Well, more than 200,000 parents have benefited from super being paid on paid parental leave, with about $285 million paid into their accounts. And on the low-income super tax offset, more than 1.3 million Australians, including 750,000 women and around 550,000 people under 30, will benefit from that. And again, those opposite voted against that. Now, we know what those opposite think about compulsory super, and here's just a few gems. That's communism. There'll be superannuation for cats and dogs soon. Senator Bragg's big day out. It's one of the biggest public policy failures since Federation. Senator Hanson, I think the whole system is broken and superannuation should be lightened up a bit. The Shadow Treasurer says it's a form of economic insanity and a form of economic social engineering. Well, we will always support higher wages, compulsory super and looking after working people in this country.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Australia's largest home builder, Metricon, reports sales falling by 40% in some markets and I quote, a complete evaporation in buyer confidence. Labor's own budget forecasts its tax changes will mean 35,000 fewer homes. How can your government seriously claim its housing policies are working when they are delivering a trifecta of fewer homes, higher rents and falling buyer confidence?
Thank you, Senator Collins. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Collins. And that question, if I may say, sounds very similar to a question that Senator Bragg asked me, but I suppose he's happy to have others ask questions for the moment. What I would say...
He's a thought leader over there.
What I would say to you, Senator, is we don't agree with many of the political assertions in your questions. First, our housing package will boost supply by at least another 30,000 homes and give 75,000 young people the chance to own their own home. We think that is a good thing. We are being clear that we are working to build more homes and we are working to back first home buyers. That is what not only the supply-side measures that the government has put in place does, but also the tax changes, which tilt the scales back in favour of first home buyers for the first time in a generation. I'd also make the point that around over 660,000 homes have been built since Labor was elected, and approvals are up 3 years in a row. Now, I know that those opposite do not regard housing as something the federal government should focus on. We think it is something we need to focus on, and we have, because most of the people in this chamber have been able to realise that great Australian dream of owning your own home. Increasingly, younger generations have not been able to do so, have found it harder to do so, and we think it is an imperative that we ensure that more first home buyers can enter the market. Well, Senator McKenzie, you might not actually want more people entering the market. We do. We think more young families.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, Minister Wong's time has expired, so I'll hear you on your point of order.
If she's going to reflect on something I've said, she should actually do it accurately.
Senator McKenzie, you need to, one, inform me that you are on a point of order, and that is not a point of order. Senator Collins, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Investor loan commitments have fallen 8.6%, the largest decline in 3.5 years.
Order.
Owner-occupier and first home buyer lending also fell. The Treasurer has called finance drying up across the housing market, and I quote, an encouraging sign. Does the Prime Minister agree with the Treasurer?
Thank you, Senator Collins. Minister Wong.
Well, I'm sure that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer are very much in agreement on this clear issue. Order. That We want more Australians able to own their own home and enter the market. And, Senator, I know in your first question you were making a range of assertions about the housing market. I would make this point. You're a senator for New South Wales. We have just under 75,000 people from New South Wales who have bought a home with a 5% deposit. Do you support that? We have about 9,400 social and affordable homes being delivered in your state. Do you support that? We have housing and infrastructure investments of $514 million. Now, these are some of the investments that the government is making in your own state. So I'd invite you, Senator, if you are so anti all of these, why don't you go and say to all of these constituents in New South Wales, we don't want you to have the 5% deposit, and we don't want more.
Senator Collins, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Investors finance 43% of newly built homes. Developers warn that driving them away will mean fewer houses and apartments being built. Will the Prime Minister reverse Labor's destructive taxes before construction collapses and rents rise further, or are 35,000 fewer homes exactly what Labor intended?
Thank you, Senator Collins. Minister Wong.
Well, if I can quote also from the market, from NAB, it's really owner-occupiers who are the winners in all of this, that we are going to redistribute the ownership of housing in Australia away from investors and more towards owner-occupiers. I mean, this is fundamentally the difference between the Coalition and the Labor Party. We actually think that first-home buyers should have a fair crack at owning their own home. Like, I know that is a remarkable proposition that you might actually say young Australians and their families should have a better crack at owning their own home. That's what we are about. You are against that. It's a very simple proposition. You want to protect an uneven playing field. We think the playing field should be levelled. It should be levelled so that first-home buyers get a fair crack at the market. That is the difference between your side of politics and ours.
Order. Senator Bragg, you've had an awful lot of interjections this afternoon. Don't backchat me. You're not in a debate with me. When I call you to order, that is exactly what I expect to happen. Senator Allman-Payne.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. 2 weeks ago, the Secretary of the Department announced their intention to resume welfare payment cancellations and suspensions from October. These penalties were suspended for 2 years after it was determined that private employment services providers were unlawfully breaching participants, causing automatic suspensions and cancellations with no accessible appeal or complaint mechanism because the decision-making process was concealed within the providers. The Commonwealth Ombudsman's December report set out several recommendations to remedy this misconduct. Minister, what specific actions has the department taken to implement the Ombudsman's recommendations and to prevent further misconduct by private employment services providers?
Thank you, Senator Allman-Payne. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Allman-Payne. I think for some time now we have had some dialogue in Senate estimates and elsewhere about the fact that there is a philosophical difference between this Labor government and the Greens political party when it comes to matters involving mutual obligation, and your question goes to that point. This government and the Labor Party for some time has had a policy supporting the concept of mutual obligation, wherein a government does have an obligation to support those out of work. I know that's something that is not supported by all members in this chamber, but Labor certainly respects that obligation, and equally those who are out of work do have an obligation to seek work. Governments have a responsibility to assist people in that regard, but the matters that you are asking about go to suspensions of payments that can be made involving people who do not fulfil the obligations that they owe to the Australian public. I'm happy to obtain some further information for you on the specific question about the suspension of those obligations. I don't have anything in front of me at the moment, being the representing minister, but if there is anything more I can provide, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Allman-Payne, first supplementary.
Economic Justice Australia estimates that 310,000 people have been affected by unlawful payment cancellations and suspensions, although the precise figure remains unknown because the government has not undertaken a comprehensive investigation of the targeted compliance framework. Why has the department not conducted its own review to determine the exact number of individuals impacted by the dysfunction of the targeted compliance framework?
Thank you, Senator Orman-Payne. Minister Watt.
Again, Senator Orman-Payne, if there's anything that I can obtain for you that specifically goes to the question, I'll do so. But the issues that you're asking about generally around the targeted compliance framework first came to attention when I held the role of Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. At the time, the department initiated a review of the system that I think was undertaken by Deloitte. It did make recommendations about changes that should be made, and to the best of my knowledge, the department is in the process of implementing those. Of course, our government does not support those receiving social security payments being unlawfully deprived of what they are entitled to. That's, of course, not something that any government should support, and I know that action has been taken by the department in order to do so. I think you did seek or refer to a particular number, and that's the matter that I'll need to come back to you on if I'm in a position to provide any information.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Orman-Payne, second supplementary.
Minister, the Anti-Poverty Centre, ACOS, Economic Justice Australia and the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Services have jointly called for the abolition of the targeted compliance framework and for compensation to be provided to every affected person. Minister, how can you reform a system founded on fear and compulsion and that relies on private providers to act appropriately when they are financially incentivised to breach participants?
Thank you, Senator Orman-Payne. Minister.
Well, again, Senator Orman-Payne, this government does not support employment service providers undertaking action that is unlawful or that is based on fear. That is not how we designed or how the system has been designed, and that's certainly not how we want to see it being implemented. What I'm advised of is that the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations has undertaken significant work to address findings from the Commonwealth Ombudsman and other reviews into the administration of the targeted compliance framework. The Secretary of the Department has provided the government with assurance about the department's work to strengthen safeguards and address outstanding issues. Our government's immediate priority is ensuring that the current employment services system is operating as it should, and that's why we've provided funding to the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations to introduce additional safeguards in order to strengthen the integrity of the targeted compliance framework. This work will ensure that every job seeker's individual circumstances are considered before any compliance requiring decision to be applied.
Senator Whittaker.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Senator McAllister. The National Disability Insurance Scheme has been life-changing for so many Australians with disability. The Albanese Labor government knows that the NDIS must be safe for the people who rely on it. How is the government cracking down on fraud and better protecting participants?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you for the question, Senator Whittaker, and I appreciate very much your focus on this life-changing scheme. You are right that this scheme must be safe and it must operate with integrity. And we have a very clear message for the people out there who think otherwise, and it is this. If you think that you can steal from the NDIS, we will come after you. It is why, when we came to government, we established the Fraud Fusion Task Force and why we invested in the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Commission. The laws that we passed through this chamber earlier this year have given the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Commission even more powers and more teeth. And in the last quarter alone, the Commission issued 111 banning orders, the highest number ever recorded in a single quarter. The task force brings together elite intelligence, data forensic and investigative powers to disrupt serious organised crime that targets government payment programs, and that is delivering results. Since the Fraud Fusion Task Force was established, more than 2,600 providers that submitted incorrect claims have been disrupted. More than 600 investigations have been launched. 27 crooks have been convicted, $50 million worth of assets have been seized. And in the last financial year alone, the Fraud Fusion Task Force has sent 50 search warrants investigating more than $118 million worth of NDIS claims, 44 individuals referred for criminal prosecution, 16 fraud cases currently before the courts, and 28 more being assessed by the CDPP. So it is a very clear message to shonks and to grifters: if you seek to drain the plans of people with a disability, you do not belong in the NDIS, you belong in prison. And that is where you will end up, because our crackdown on NDIS fraud is ramping up and we are reviewing more claims and conducting more investigations and prosecuting more fraudsters than ever before.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Whittaker, first supplementary.
Participants and their families are the ones most affected when shonks and fraudsters seek to exploit the scheme. Can the minister explain why the Albanese Labor government's investments in fraud prevention are so important for the people the NDIS was built to support?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Every dollar lost to fraud is a dollar that should be supporting a person with a disability. And when we recover that money, it goes back to where it always should have been, into a participant's plan. So tackling fraud isn't just about the money, because where there is fraud and exploitation, there is also poor quality services, there is violence, there is abuse, there is neglect and exploitation. It is why we have invested more than $1.35 billion to stamp down on fraud and protect participants. The Fraud Fusion Task Force is uncovering more fraud, seizing criminal assets and putting more shonks and grifters before the courts. But we are not stopping there. There is a bill before this Senate which will give us more tools to protect participants, including the powers to issue warrants, issue fines, haul people in for questioning, request key data, because the NDIS supports people with disability. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and it should never be a payday for criminals.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. Senator Whittaker, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. The Albanese Labor government has made record investments to protect participants and the NDIS from fraud. Can the minister explain why these investments were necessary and outline how the government is improving the system to secure the NDIS for future generations?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, when we came to government, the NDIS had been left a soft target by the government that came before. The compliance architecture that the scheme needed simply did not exist. A senior fraud investigator resigned in 2020 and said it was simply too much fraud for too few people. The Australian National Audit Office said that the NDIS lacked basic prevention controls for fraud and non-compliance, and there were big gaps in the compliance system. Under those opposite, claims submitted between 4:30 and 6 p.m. on a weekday couldn't be reviewed in NDIS systems before they were paid. Claims made every second weekend couldn't be reviewed. And our government is fixing this. More NDIS claims are now reviewed each day than were reviewed in a year under the system presided over by those opposite, because we know that protecting the NDIS is not
answering
optional.
Has expired. Senator Shoebridge. No? No, Senator Shoebridge. Okay. Order. 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 Yes, I will. Senator Blythe.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, productivity fell 0.7% in the 24-25, and the latest quarterly figures show it falling again. The latest ABS data shows GDP per hour worked fell 0.6% in the March quarter and increased just 0.3% over the year. Minister, can you identify a single year since Labor came to office in which productivity growth has reached the long-run average necessary to sustainably increase Australian living standards?
Thank you, Senator Blythe. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I welcome the question on the economy from the senator. And what I would say is, first.
Order.
First, I think we all recognise the challenges that we face as a nation in increasing productivity. We know that we have had a very large productivity push a number of decades ago, and as the Treasurer has said, many of those what we would describe as low-hanging fruit reforms have been done, and so we have to focus on a multi-factor approach to how we increase productivity in this country, because the senator is— well, I'll take the interjection from Senator Hume, who, the senator for higher taxes, is now interjecting to say lower taxes. I mean, the incoherence of the economic policy of those opposite is quite remarkable, really. Sorry, I thought you were rising to defend her, but no. What I would say is productivity, as the RBA has identified, has been a long-standing challenge in the economy, and that's why it was such a focus in the budget. And in the budget, we delivered the broadest productivity push for many decades. There are 15 reforms in the budget, which are all about trying to increase productivity, all about trying to attract and absorb more investment, make it quicker and easier to build, and to slash compliance costs. These include the better targeted research and development tax incentive and the incentivising investment and innovation package, which had $3.5 billion in new measures that lowered taxes for business. I'm happy to go on. Reducing red tape by about $10 billion a year.
Senator Blyth, first supplementary.
Thank you. I'm going to take that there isn't one single year you can point to. Minister, you have repeatedly pointed to the government's productivity agenda and the measures announced in the budget. If those policies are working, why has the government been unable, after 4 years, to produce a sustained improvement in Australia's productivity growth? And by what date does the government expect Australians to see one?
Thank you, Senator Blyth. Minister Wong.
Well, I was going through the measures in the budget which are about pushing forward on productivity, which has been a challenge for governments of both political persuasions for some years. You might recall that, in fact, productivity went backwards under the Morrison government, well, actually it did 4 times, December 18th, March 20th, June of 2020 and September 21. So my point is, if we can move away from perhaps the sort of politics that you're trying to engage in here, I think we all agree productivity is important for the country because it is about future growth, and that is why we have—
Order. Senators Cash and McKenzie, it's not a chat between the two of you. The minister was on her feet trying to answer a question without interference. Did you wish to continue?
Did. So that is why the budget includes the 4 packages I've described in relation to investment and innovation, red tape, barriers to trade and the single national market.
Senator Blyth, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, you can't outline any year where productivity increased under your watch. You can't outline how, let alone when, any of your policies will have an effect. Minister, does the Prime Minister have a plan to address Australia's productivity decline that is cutting living standards and killing our economy? Or do you admit that Labor isn't working for Australians?
Order. Minister Gallagher. Minister Wong.
Well, first, I look forward to you leading the charge inside the coalition to support some of these productivity measures, Senator, such as reducing red tape, which as I understand it, the coalition has not yet backed in. So I look forward to you participating and actually trying to improve. Do you have to keep shouting, Senator McKenzie? Would you like— I mean—
Senator McKenzie, come to order. Minister, please continue.
Those opposite voted against—
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, either listen in silence or leave the chamber. Minister Wong, please continue.
Those opposite come in here and complain about productivity, but voted against the EPBC reforms, which are all about productivity, and voted against regulatory reform, which is all about productivity, why don't you put up or shut up on this issue, really? Why don't you put up or shut up? Because you complain, but you always vote the other way. You and One Nation, voting against economic reform because you're too worried about the voters which are going with One Nation instead of actually behaving like a party of government should.
Thank you. Order. Order. I'm going back to Senator Shoebridge now. Senator Shoebridge.
Thank you, President. And I apologise for missing the call, and I appreciate the indulgence. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister. The Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion was established to give the community answers, including the role of the security services, and as one of a number of measures, including a gun buyback, to keep the community safe. Can the Minister confirm the government is treating this work with the seriousness it demands, including giving the Royal Commission the support it needs if it is to establish the truth?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
The government has made clear its support for the Royal Commission. The Royal Commission has very wide powers, substantial powers that it can choose to exercise, and the conduct of the Royal Commission is a matter for the Royal Commission, which you as a lawyer, as you often remind us, would know that it is an independent office appointed actually by the Crown, and there are powers which reside in the Commission, which executive government would be bound by, and we've made clear we will continue to respect the independence and the work of the Commission.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Well, Minister, a former ASIO source with direct knowledge of the Bondi gunmen has been denied a visa to give evidence by your government, despite the Commission saying it's eager to hear from him. Will the government intervene to make sure this evidence reaches the Commission and a visa is granted? Or is a visa decision being allowed to override the Royal Commission that the Prime Minister himself set up?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator,
Order.
I know that I would make 2 points. The first is the Royal Commission is independent. The second is the government will continue to act on the advice from security agencies. I appreciate that you have a different view about intelligence and security matters to us.
Oh, my goodness. Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Sorry, Senator Shoebridge, I could not see you.
No, that's okay.
Point of order.
Yeah, it's a question of relevance. My question was about Home Affairs. There has been no security assessment banning this individual from coming to the country.
Thank you, Senator
It's a red herring.
As I've also reminded you on previous occasions, a point of order is not an opportunity to debate the matter, and the minister's being directly relevant. Minister, please continue.
Well, I'll just again say what I said. Unlike you, Senator, we will always work to act in the national interest, and that includes considering the advice of intelligence and security agencies. These are decisions which are made in accordance with the statutory framework, and the government respects the independence of the Royal Commission.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Well, phase 1 of the gun buyback, which was one of these safety measures, begins on 2 November, covering roughly a quarter of registered firearms in New South Wales. But apart from that, other states and territories are still not locked into a nationally consistent scheme. When will your government secure agreement from every jurisdiction? Or do you accept that a patchwork of gun laws leaves this country as exposed as it was before Bondi?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, I'm not sure the extent to which that's a supplementary on a visa question, Senator, but I'll accept as a matter of courtesy, I'll try and respond. We are pleased that New South Wales is working with the Commonwealth Government in relation to the gun buyback, and we would urge all states to engage with the reform in the same way as New South Wales.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration and Multicultural Affairs, Senator Watt. The government's own Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade tells Australians not to travel to numerous countries because of terrorism, kidnapping, violent crime, civil unrest and institutional collapse. One Nation says if those countries are too dangerous for Australians to visit, they are too dangerous to accept ordinary migration from on a business-as-usual basis. Why does Labor continue to accept migration from countries you tell Australians are too dangerous to visit?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Bell. I actually didn't know that until Senator Paterson just interjected, but I understand what you're saying is that Ukraine is a do-not-travel country at the moment, so I presume that your policy would apply to Ukrainians seeking to move here, or is that only from certain parts of the world? Is it only certain migrants from certain countries that are do-not-travel that are banned from coming to Australia? I think what we know is going on here is that One Nation is seeking to copy policies from certain other parts of the world and bring them into Australia. We know that those sorts of policies have been put forward by certain other governments in other parts of the world. Sadly, we often find that the Liberal and National parties then follow One Nation when they copy policies from other parts of the world. So I'll be interested to know how many days it is before the Liberal Party brings in this policy as part of their policy platform as well. Senator Bell, this government always bases our policies on the advice of security agencies. There is extremely strong vetting that goes on around anyone who seeks to migrate from Australia, whether they be a potentially dangerous individual from the countries that you're referring to, or indeed potentially dangerous individuals that are seeking to come to Australia from other countries. I'm not sure why it is that One Nation doesn't have a problem with dangerous individuals seeking to come to Australia. I mean, would One Nation stop Tommy Robinson from migrating to Australia, a serial criminal who is sometimes associated with by members of the One Nation party? Our policy is not racially discriminatory. It's about protecting Australians and encouraging the migrants who make a big difference to Australia. Your policy is simply copying policies from other parts of the world.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, first supplementary.
Australia's terrorism threat level remains probable, and One Nation has called for migration from do-not-travel countries to be stopped unless security agencies, your security agencies, can give Australians an absolute assurance to the safety of Australians. Why is Labor willing to warn Australians that countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Somalia, Sudan, Syria and Yemen are unsafe to enter, while still accepting migration from those same places without adopting One Nation's security test?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister Watt.
Well, I'm not sure whether the One Nation party has actually ever sought to be briefed on these issues by our security agencies. I'm sure the minister would be prepared to offer that kind of a briefing to One Nation if you chose to seek one. And again, I make the point that One Nation likes to look tough on these issues by talking about these sorts of policies, but then is selective about which countries it applies it to. I'd be interested to know why One Nation wants to ban migration from certain do-not-travel countries but not others. Why is that? And that's because One Nation are simply trying to base their migration policies on dividing Australians rather than bringing them together, and that's something that this government will never seek to do.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, second supplementary.
Minister Burke has already accepted country-specific visa restrictions when Labor suspended most subclass 600 visitor visas linked to Iranian passports on migration integrity grounds. If Labor can restrict visas from one country when it suits its political argument, why won't it back One Nation's call to restrict ordinary migration on national security grounds from every country DFAT says Australians shouldn't travel to?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister Watt.
My recollection, Senator Bell, is that the reason the government introduced the policy that it did regarding Iran was that it was an immediate response to the events that we were seeing in Iran at that point in time. It wasn't a blanket ban in the way that you are seeking to impose for some do-not-travel countries, but not others. Senator Canavan, I would encourage you to think about how following One Nation has gone for your party, because you more than anyone in the National Party has enabled One Nation, and that has resulted in the National Party being almost eliminated from the political landscape. So, Senator Canavan, I'd think twice about backing in One Nation. It hasn't really gone very well for you. And, Senator Bell, one thing I can assure you of is that this Labor government will never take policy advice from the One Nation Party. We won't be taking it on this issue, and we certainly won't be taking it on things like your desire to abolish compulsory superannuation or to cut wages, cut paid parental leave and all of the other cost of living relief we're providing.
The time for answering has expired. I advise the chamber Senator Babet has passed his question to Senator Thorpe. Order. 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 I would like to hear Order. I would like to hear Senator Thorpe's question. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you. My question is for the Minister representing Agriculture, which I understand is Minister McCarthy. The Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, APFMA, evaluates, registers and regulates agrochemicals, including pesticides and herbicides. APFMA proposes to raise the maximum residue limit of a PFAS forever pesticide in berries and other foods 500-fold, despite it having harmful health impacts. When I wrote to APFMA about this, they replied that it is only their role to assess chemicals against legislative criteria and that it is the government's role to assess for safer alternatives and promote them. What is your government doing to phase out harmful PFAS pesticides so that our foods and bodies are not poisoned?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McAllister. Minister McCarthy, sorry.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Thorpe for the question and for the advanced knowledge of the question as well. Senator Thorpe, firstly, thank you for your work with PFAS and the Senate inquiry, and I understand that the recommendations are before us. Can I just say that with the APVMA, clearly I know that it is an independent regulator. They do make those decisions. But in regards to the question specifically that you've asked, I understand that you will be also meeting with the Minister in relation to the specific concerns that you've raised. On June 16, 2026, the APVMA proposed an increase to the MRL, the maximum residue limit for the pesticide isoclisirum. Maximum residue levels are set at levels that pose no risk to human health, and the true safety limits are based on human health and are called acceptable daily intake, ADI, or acute reference dose. MRLs are set far, far below these health limits.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Thank you. Reviews of APVMA have called out governance issues, industry bias and lack of independent decision-making, including relying on industry to provide their own toxicity assessment. Your government has done nothing to implement any of the recommendations to reform APVMA. When are you going to finally act to save people's lives who are being poisoned, particularly our children who we give our berries to?
Senator Thorpe, your time for asking has expired. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Thorpe. I reject the assertion that the government is doing nothing in regards to this. Our minister is very vigilant across all areas of her portfolio, in particular this one, and I'm sure you will find when you have that meeting with her this afternoon. As I've said, the Australian Pesticide and Veterinary Medicine Authority is an independent regulator, administering a scientifically rigorous, risk-based regulatory system for agriculture and veterinary chemicals.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
It's not independent when it takes money from the industry. So the APVMA is the only chemical regulator in the world to be majority industry funded, relying on the value of chemicals sold, which means they put chemical approvals before the safety of the population in this country. Why is your government not fully funding APVMA to ensure they can work independent of industry?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Look, Senator Thorpe, the Australian government acknowledges issues raised in the reviews, and we are taking action to make sure the APVMA is a strong independent regulator with a clear understanding of its role and responsibilities. And throughout that reform process, the APVMA will continue to use the full suite of its regulatory powers to promptly finalise long-standing chemical reviews.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. With widely reported evidence of $15 billion of CFMEU corruption on the Victoria Big Build, the Commonwealth is providing $30 billion of funding towards Victorian Big Build projects. When questioned at the Finance and Public Administration Committee, officials from the Department of Infrastructure Transport Department said they would cooperate with the Victorian Royal Commission. Minister, will you commit that ministers in this government and Commonwealth agencies will cooperate with, if requested, and appear before the Victorian Royal Commission into CFMEU corruption on the Big Build infrastructure projects?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I'm happy to attempt an answer here, but I'm not sure how it relates to my role as the Minister for Finance. Because she's asking, the senator's asking me around essentially a government position about engaging with a royal commission.
Order.
Yeah. But as Senator Mackenzie would presumably know, the Minister for Infrastructure is the responsible minister who manages the agreements between states and territories around the delivery of infrastructure projects. It's not the just the Department of Finance has a broad remit and a wide range of responsibilities, but when it comes to infrastructure, the Minister for Infrastructure is responsible for that. In relation, and I'm also not sure I'm in a position to answer what a Royal Commission might seek from the Commonwealth. I mean, these are matters that are usually then responded to by the Attorney-General, not the Minister for Finance. And I don't know how much more helpful I can be, because I don't think either of the elements of Senator Mackenzie's questions relate to my portfolio matters for which I am here to respond. I can confirm that the Minister for Infrastructure has, in the federal financial agreement that is reached with the states and territories, sought transparency and accountability in relation to the Commonwealth dollars that are provided to states and territories, and delivery milestones in relation to those projects be provided to the Commonwealth, as you would expect in any provision of finances to a state or territory government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
As raised last week, Jeffrey Watson told our Senate inquiry that no ministers or Commonwealth officials had approached him to discuss his evidence of up to $15 billion of economic corruption on Victorian Big Build infrastructure projects. Given the Commonwealth is contributing $30 billion towards Victorian Big Build projects, and your portfolio responsibility is to ensure the prudent expenditure of Commonwealth taxpayer funds, what action have you taken as the responsible minister or directed your department officials to undertake?
Your question has expired. Minister Gallagher.
Yeah, point of order, Chair. Senator President, with the supplementary question, I think the fact that the senator is asking the wrong minister has become patently clear. In fact, I have answered these questions before on behalf of the Prime Minister, referencing action that Minister King has taken. This is not a matter for the Minister for Finance. This is a matter that should either go to me as the PM, for the Prime Minister, or I think it's Senator McCarthy represents as Minister King.
Thank you. I'm sure Senator Mackenzie has heard that advice. Senator Mackenzie, did you wish to redirect your question, or do you want me to call? Thank you.
Again, that would mean Senator Gallagher, as Finance Minister, responsibility for the whole of government. That is not what the Westminster system does. We are all accountable in this chamber, where she's wonderful and outstanding, but the Westminster system requires ministers to be accountable to the people through the parliament for matters within their responsibility. And you are asking her a question that is not within her responsibility, and I suggest you've been here sufficiently long, Senator, you might ask the correct minister.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Mackenzie has heard that advice. Indeed, in her first answer, Minister Gallagher explained the involvement of her role as Minister for Finance. Senator Mackenzie does not wish to redirect her question, so I'll invite the minister to answer the question in her capacity as Minister for Finance. Minister.
Thank you. Well, there isn't a government that's done more than this government to respond to the issues that have been raised, particularly around the CFMEU and the construction industry. Indeed, appointing an administrator for a start, and all of the work that has gone in around that was not anything that those opposite did when they were in government. They didn't do a single. They didn't do a single thing to respond to it. Now, when it comes to what we have done, the infrastructure minister has, and this is, I think, advice that you were given last week by Senator Wong, has written to state and territory ministers on multiple occasions reinforcing their obligations under funding agreements to report instances of suspected criminal behaviour or corruption to the relevant regulator and the department. So on top of that, we've taken concrete action to clean up the industry where the Coalition and the ABCC had completely and totally failed.
Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Thank you. Victoria, Minister, has 28 allegations of unlawful activity on the North East Link and 16 on the suburban rail loop. What action have you taken to assure yourself that everything has been being done to stop corruption on building sites and ensure federal funds are not being siphoned off to fund criminal gangs?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, as I said in my previous answer, I've outlined what Minister King has done as the responsible minister, but obviously, all ministers, including myself, work with Minister King, and there is no place for corruption or criminals in the delivery of any project, any infrastructure project anywhere in the country. Now, for the Commonwealth, we have sought those assurances from the state and territories that deliver on behalf of the Commonwealth or where we are a funding partner in a project that is delivered by the state and territory. There are responsibilities on the state and territories to respond to the Commonwealth, and that is the arrangements that Minister King has put in place.
Minister Wong.
I'll just ask if Senator Mackenzie could stop shouting. There's point of order, disorderly behaviour. Could the senator please stop shouting while the question is being answered?
Well, you would have heard I have attempted to ask Senator Mackenzie to stop being disrespectful. I will demand that of you again, Senator Mackenzie, as I did earlier in question time. If you can't remain silent and respectful in here, please leave the chamber. Minister, did you wish to continue? Thank you. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. The Albanese Labor government is delivering real change for Australian workers by helping them earn more and keep more of what they earn. From today, new minimum workplace standards for workers in the gig economy come into effect. As a result of this government workplace reforms, can the Minister outline how many of these changes will benefit gig workers right across the country?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Sheldon. And I know you spent a lot of your life campaigning for the exact changes that have come into force today. Today is a great day for the tens of thousands of people in Australia who work in the gig economy. From today, gig economy workers, such as those who do food and drink delivery, are finally going to get paid a guaranteed fair wage of $32 an hour as a minimum. What that means is that your food will taste better, knowing that the people who are delivering it are getting a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And this is a direct result of Labor's introduction of world-leading laws which we passed to close the loopholes that meant these workers were being underpaid. Of course, we will never forget that these laws were opposed by the Liberals, the Nationals and the One Nation Party, with Senator O'Sullivan, in fact, at the time calling it the single worst piece of industrial relations policy for 3 decades. That's what the Liberals and their friends in One Nation think about workers getting a fair go. For too long, food delivery workers fell through the cracks without fair pay, sick leave or basic protections. Labor has now changed the law because every worker deserves a fair go. We legislated a model for minimum standards for these workers because it was clear their model of employment was not a traditional employee relationship, but nor were they true independent contractors. And as a result, they were falling through our country's workplace relations safety net. That's now changed due to the laws that Labor has passed, but importantly, we left it to the Independent Fair Work Commission to decide when and how these minimum standards should apply in response to applications from parties. This approach gave the Commission the flexibility to respond to the new ways of work we see emerging in our economy by ensuring there are minimum protections in place, but without trying to force workers into a standard employment relationship. And last week, the Fair Work Commission agreed that workers for the likes of Uber Eats and DoorDash should earn a safety net wage of up to $32 per hour. It also agreed that protection for these workers should be strengthened. That's a world first, and it happened under Labor.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
The Fair Work Commission's minimum standards decision was enabled by the Albanese government's closing loopholes laws and is a milestone in delivering stronger protections and a fairer safety net for gig economy workers. Minister, how else is the government providing stronger protections for workers, and what are the biggest threats to this safety net?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. Well, on this side of the chamber, we believe that every Australian worker deserves fair wages and conditions, as well as protection from unfair treatment. We've backed that up with real action, including getting more people into work, providing or advocating for wage rises, closing the gender pay gap, enshrining penalty rates in law, and ensuring workers who do the same job get the same pay. But with One Nation now leading the Liberal Party on policy ideas, Australian workers' wages and conditions are under threat. We know that One Nation have consistently opposed wage rises for workers. They want to get rid of penalty rates altogether. And of course, their leader, Pauline Hanson, thinks Australian workers are lazy. And if you think it's all sounding a bit familiar, that's because it is. These are all anti-worker positions that have been put time and time again by One Nation's allies in the Liberal Party. The Albanese Labor government is delivering the real change that Australian workers need. The only change the Liberals, Nationals and One Nation want for workers is to make life harder.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
This decision is a big step in delivering Australia's world-leading gig worker protections and means food delivery workers don't have to trade off flexibility for fairer protections. Minister, how else is the Albanese Labor government helping Australian workers to be financially secure, not only throughout their working life, but beyond it as well?
Order. Minister Watt.
Senator Sheldon, well, Labor is proudly pro-worker and proudly pro-superannuation. How about that one, Senator Bragg? But if the Liberals and One Nation get their way on wages and super, it would absolutely decimate the economic security and retirement incomes of millions of Australian workers. And that's because the Liberals and One Nation share a divisive, anti-worker and anti-superannuation ideology, and it will be Australian workers who would be much worse off under the Liberals and One Nation. In a recent interview on Sky News, as it then was, Senator Bragg was asked, on industrial relations, obviously we had the work choices debacle. Are you looking to go back in that direction? And Senator Bragg's response, it's time for some risk. Well, we know that the only people at risk under the Liberals and One Nation are Australian workers, and what those workers can be assured of is that the Albanese Labor government will always have their interests at heart, because Labor is making sure that Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, while the Liberals, Nationals and One Nation want to take it away.
Thank you. Minister Watt.
Thank you. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.